20 years I've been hearing far-fetched stories about a mythical American supercar.
An American supercar with styling to rival that of even Lamborghini, and with an engine that will produce over 1,000 horsepower at times and beat the Ferrari F40 in a straight line.
It's called a Vector.
All of this for the low price of $285,000 in 1990. Yes, today we're going to be talking about Vector, the company built by Gerald Wiegert, the man who wanted to bring an all-American Lamborghini to America to beat, well, Lamborghini.
The primary reason the Vector was designed was to be a challenge to European dominance of the exotic car, luxury car market segment, and this car represents a status symbol for America in the automotive area.
And this dream was wild. The man went on to push for the car for years, driving it himself to events because he couldn't afford a trailer. This story is wild, and the man went to the grave still hoping to bring his ultimate vision to fruition. But the good news is, he did actually bring it to fruition until those pesky Indonesians came in and eventually stole him from it. This is Storytime. This is the story of Vector, an incredible one. I'm Jason Hassett, and welcome to Car Nerd. Welcome back to Car Nerd. This is, of course, Storytime, where we jump into some of the most interesting brands, cars, and just general stories from the automotive world. And I'm really excited about this week's one because going into it, the research has been done for me, and I know absolutely nothing about this. So I'm going to be very much learning along with you, which is going to be fun. I've seen the car, I heard of it, but I've never actually really dived in and found out what this company is about. And I know it has a very interesting history. So I don't even know how long this is going to be, whether it'll be an hour like normal or half an hour, whatever, we'll see. But for those of you who are new here, the whole point of these Storytime episodes is that we dive in using research from the interwebs, which is violently unreliable, about as unreliable as a Lamborghini for that matter, and go through some of the interesting pasts. Now, because this is from the internet, obviously there's going to be some stuff, I'm sure, maybe not, there's going to be some stuff that is either inaccurate, incomplete, or just plain wrong. And hopefully it's not, but the point of this channel is we all get to learn along. So if you see anything that is incorrect, if I've missed anything you think is interesting, please head down to the comments, let everyone know so we can all learn together. And while you're down there, why not hit that like button, hit subscribe, and hit that little notification bell so you can get the latest on new episodes, which are now going to be weekly. Let's jump into the story of Vector. Gerald Wiegert, or Wiegert, I'm assuming it is because it's German, right, is born on July 12th, 1944 in Detroit, Michigan. His father is a machinist, and Jerry shows early signs of being very mechanically abled. In high school, he and friends built a drag racing hot rod, a 1954 Chevy with an Oldsmobile J2 tri-carb engine that becomes the local B-gas class winner. That's insane. I'm going to say Wiegert for the rest of this just because I've gone into this German mode now and I cannot get rid of it. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to just say Wiegert, and I'm sure I'll get lots of comments being like, "You're not saying it right, you absolute moron." And that's fine. But here we are. And it didn't stop there with Wiegert. As a teen, he wins a national design contest that earns him a scholarship for college-level design classes, reinforcing his dream to design vehicles. He studies transportation and product design at the Center for Creative Studies and Art Design and Art Center College of Design, and also takes mechanical engineering courses at Northrop University. Wiegert interns at General Motors and works as a freelance design consultant for all of Detroit's big three automakers in the late 1960s. So building up a proper reputation here in the automotive world, which is class. But he found corporate life stifling and turned down a full-time job offer at GM. Later recalling that, frankly, I didn't want to be a yes man. Instead, he heads to Southern California determined to build his own supercar company. At just 26 years of age, Wiegert founds a company. I might just call him Jerry. I think Jerry is probably easier, right? Let's say Jerry from now on. Makes life easier. At 26, Jerry founds a company called Vehicle Design Force with the audacious goal of creating a world-class American supercar to challenge Ferraris and Lamborghinis of the time. He partners with Lee Brown, a Hollywood custom car builder, and together they develop the first concept car, initially known simply as the Vector. Jerry's first prototype is a low, wedge-shaped fiberglass mock-up built on a Porsche chassis with no engine or interior. It debuts at the 1972 Los Angeles Auto Expo, a show specifically for cars. Given it's called an Auto Expo, whoever wrote that, like, it doesn't need to be there. I think everyone knows the car, like, it's a locomotive, like, I don't know. Despite being non-functional, the radical design, blending cues from the Alfa Romeo Carabo, the Lamborghini Countach, and the Mercedes C111, garner huge attention, as you can imagine. In fact, Motor Trend features the car on its April 1972 cover with the caption, "Vector, US Challenge to Italian Style." The cover appearance gives the fledgling company instant international recognition. At the show, Jerry touts ambitious specs for the Vector, originally suggesting that they might use a Wankel engine, a twin-rotor Wankel engine, or a Porsche Flat 6, and estimated the price of the car to be around $50,000, which sounds nothing today, but it's a staggering figure back then. He describes the car as a showcase of American components and technology, a $50,000 supercar meant to be worth every cent. Like the Cybertruck, though, within a few years, that projected price doubled to $100,000 plus. The collaboration, though, between Wiegert, Jerry, and Lee Brown is short-lived. The two men start to fall out before the prototype can even be made drivable. And by 1977, Wiegert has bought out or otherwise ousted Brown, even relinquishing Brown's claim to the original 1972 show car. From that point on, Jerry vows to go it alone and start his own subway. Wrong, Jerry. Later noting that partnerships seem to be nothing but a recipe for disasters. He renames the company Vector Automotive to reflect an aerospace-influenced philosophy.
It's called a Vector. No, not Vectra. Vectra is a little rash you get when you buy a Vauxhall. This is a Vector, as in terror.
Working solo, though, Jerry completely redesigns the car into what he now calls the Vector W2, the W being for his surname, 2 denoting twin turbo. A newly refined W2 prototype is shown at the 1977 Los Angeles Auto Show, which, did you know, is exclusively for cars. Now much closer to the final Vector look, extreme wedge shape with elements of folded paper, Italian styling, and jet fighter influence. This version is still a static display, but it boasts advanced construction for the era. An aluminium structure, yes, it's aluminium, with steel only in the front roll bar section and a composite body, foreshadowing the car's high-tech aspirations. Jerry, with an early W2 prototype in the late 1970s, continually refined the design and often made splashy public appearances with the car to drum up hype. Throughout the late 1970s, Wiegert relentlessly promotes the W2, updating the prototype and story to keep people interested. He's known to repaint the car different colours, white, red, then black, for various shows and photo shoots. He also embraces a flamboyant PR style. At one Los Angeles Auto Show, which is famously just for cars, he famously wore a fighter pilot jacket and employed a spokesmodel that they dubbed Miss Vector to emphasize the car's jet fighter inspiration. Jerry incorporates any cutting-edge tech he can, continually tweaking the W2 with ideas like turbocharging, 2 Ray J turbos on a small block V8, as those technologies begin to emerge. After years of development, though, by 1978, Wiegert finally gets the car to run under its own steam, its own power. Yes. Luftwaffe. The functional W2 prototype uses a heavily modified 5.7-litre Chevrolet V8 with twin turbochargers tuned for a claimed horsepower of 600 plus. Beautiful. The engine is mounted transversely behind the cockpit and paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission. A very unusual choice, to say the least, but one Jerry makes due to turbo-hydromatic strength in handling big torques. Jerry asserts his setup could push the car to 242 miles an hour at a time almost 14 years before any production car, had ever cracked 200 miles an hour. While this top speed claim is never verified, the W2 is extensively road tested. Incredibly, Wiegert puts over 100,000 miles on the prototype during development, driving it on public roads to test both durability and because he can't afford a trailer to haul it around. Despite the W2's impressive looks and specs, Wiegert finds it very difficult to secure the massive funding needed to get the car into production. Investors are skeptical. Wiegert notes that the high-profile failures of the Bricklin SV1 and worries about John DeLorean's project made backers very wary of independent supercars. And we've covered John DeLorean, so you should check that out if you want to hear that story. It's quite interesting. No. So as a result, the Vector project limps into the 1980s. The Vector W2 becomes a media sensation, though, even before production. A pre-production W2 appeared on the cover of Car and Driver in December of 1980 with an inside story lauding its race-bred engineering, projected 650 horsepower twin-turbo V8, and mind-boggling looks, albeit without any actual road test. And at the same time, Road and Track, as well as other magazines, were also highlighting the car with speculative technical articles and so on before the car was again even road tested by these reviewers. Jerry eagerly provides outrageous performance figures. 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, 242 mile an hour top speed, and wants to keep the Vector in the press. Top speed claims far in excess of 200 miles an hour become mythology around this Vector. This bold marketing leads to some in the press to suspect the Vector is more sizzle than steak. The term vaporware is occasionally whispered, but the sheer audacity of the project keeps the public interested. With little money for formal advertising, Jerry turns to guerrilla marketing. Vector sells posters, t-shirts, and glossy brochures depicting the W2 to enthusiasts and car show attendees. The car is frequently photographed in dramatic settings, often alongside futuristically dressed models, appearing in magazines and even on teenagers' bedroom walls as supercar posters of the 1980s. The pop culture presence, aided by the Vector's resemblance to a science fiction-like fighter jet, sustained the dream through the lean years. During the 1980s, Jerry continues refining the car's engineering to meet safety and manufacturing requirements, all while insisting on aerospace-level quality. He coins the term aeromotive engineering, which is a lot like my favourite word for that kind of thing, bolloshite. The chassis is redesigned as a semi-monocoque tube using aluminum honeycomb panels bounded with epoxy, and the body panels are made of Kevlar and carbon fibre, exotic materials for cars at the time and something more akin to an F-16 than a road car. Vector claims the W2/W8 now chassis car can withstand incredible stress and exceeds DOT crash standards, which it does later pass before production. The company proudly points out details like military spec wiring, fighter jet switches, digital instrument displays, and even mentions of using NASA and fighter plane tech in promotional materials. All of this contribute to the mystique of Vector, America's first aerospace supercar.
Well, guess what? It isn't a myth at all, and I found it.
By the late 1980s, Jerry Wiegert realizes he can't fund Vector alone. He renounces his vow of independence and transforms Vector into a publicly traded company to attract serious investment. This move brings in much-needed cash and a formal board of directors. With funding finally in hand, Vector Automotive expands from a tiny operation to a real automaker, expanding from just 4 employees to about 80 and multiple buildings in Wilmington, Los Angeles. Wilmington, Los Angeles. After nearly 2 decades of promise, Jerry is ready to get his little car into production. And in 1989, something absolutely incredible happens. I am born. But also, production of the car. Now named the Vector W8 Twin Turbo, it represents one of the longest gestation periods in automotive history, evolving from the original 1972 concept over 17 years. The W8's design remains a wild wedge, clearly descended from the 1970s prototype, but is now fully functional and street legal. It retains styling nods to Alfa Romeos and Lamborghini Countaches, yet stands out with its own unique mix of sharp edges and soft curbs in the fender arches. The look is unmistakably American in its brashness, more fighter jet than Italian sculpture, which is exactly what Wiegert intended. True to Jerry's aerospace vision, the Vector A is built like an aircraft. The chassis is an aluminium honeycomb semi-monocoque with an integrated roll cage bonded and riveted using aircraft-grade epoxy and fasteners. The body panels are made from carbon fiber Kevlar composite for lightweight and strength. Prior to production, the W8 successfully passes all of the US Department of Transit crash tests and emission requirements, validating its engineering despite the company's small size. And all of that, by the way, is incredibly impressive. Like, given where it started from, bravo, Jerry. Bravo. The car rides on bespoke 15-inch magnesium wheels and huge Pirelli P0 tires and features racing-derived suspension, double wishbones up front, and a Didion tube setup in back, tuned for high-speed stability. The pounding heart of this W8 is a 6-litre redneck all-aluminium V8 fortified with racing internals, forged crank, forged pistons, Carrillo stainless steel rods. The thing is a thing of beauty, a real thing of beauty. Twin Garrett turbochargers feed this engine and driver adjustable boost from 8 psi up to 14 psi for maximum power. The base is around 628 to 650 horsepower, dyno proven on normal boosts, but at full boost, the engine can reportedly churn out over 1,000 horsepower. Indeed, Vector recorded an absurd 1,200 horsepower during a factory dyno run. Power goes to the rear wheels through a 3-speed General Motors turbo hydromatic 425 automatic transmission with beefed up internals, and it's gonna need to be beefy. One of the W8's more controversial design choices, but one that Jerry defends for its ability to handle the immense torque. This setup gives the W8 unique driving character, a brutal acceleration available in each wildly long gear. And Jerry spares no expense on the interior either. It felt like a fighter jet. The car has electroluminescent digital gauges and screens that can toggle through different display modes. The controls use mil-sec toggle switches and circuit breakers sourced from military suppliers, and the seats are Recaro power seats with inflatable lumbar bladders. The sound system is a high-end surround sound system. Even the climate control and interior fittings are top-notch for the era. All of this justifies Wiegert's claim that the Vector is the most technologically advanced supercar of its day. Now let's get to the price. Because, he went big on everything, including the price. The initial list price is $283,000 in 1990, making it one of the most expensive cars in the world at the time. And later cars reportedly sell for $400,000 due to added inflation and features. Despite this, there is significant intrigue from wealthy buyers. The first two production W8s are sold to Saudi Arabian princes, Kel Surprise, and other celebrity customers line up, including young tennis star Andre Agassi, and the company portrays the W8 as an exclusive, hand-built American answer to Ferrari. For a brief moment, demand for this wildly expensive car outstrips Vector's tiny supply chain. And I think what's most surprising about this is when it gets into the hands of reviewers, things aren't as bad as I thought they would be. When automotive journalists finally get their hands on the W8 in 1991, the car largely lives up to the supercar billing, with some caveats. Road and Track tests the W8 and records a 0-60 in 4.2 seconds versus Vector's claim of 3.9 and a quarter mile of 12 seconds at 118 miles an hour, on par with the fastest exotics of the day. In a later session at a Pomona drag strip, Road and Track does actually hit 3.8 second 0-60 and a similar 12-second quarter mile, plus an impressive 0.97 G skid pad grip, the highest lateral acceleration they had ever measured in a street car at the time. These numbers officially put the Vector in the same league as the Ferrari F40 and Porsche 959. However, attempts to check its top speed become increasingly frustrating. Road and Track estimates the true top speed to be around 218 miles an hour, and in one test they reach 193 miles an hour before the driver wisely backs off. While shy of Jerry's boast, a 200 mile an hour capability is certainly plausible with enough road. But then we get on to reliability. The W8's rollout is not without trouble. Road and Track actually ends up testing 2 different W8s because the first one suffered overheating issues that halted their session. Jerry pleaded for patience and rushed out a second car to the track the next day after overnight fixes. Car and Driver also tests a 1991 Vector and encounters problems. One W8's transmission fails during hard acceleration and a backup car has overheating woes. These incidents contribute to an undercurrent of skepticism in the media, with some journalists noting that Vector's small engineering team didn't have the thorough durability testing of a major manufacturer, and Jerry spins these issues as minor teething problems. But the negative press foreshadows some of the issues ahead. Foreshadowing. But there's a notable PR disaster unfolding with Agassi's W8. Agassi had ordered a bright red W8, insisting on taking delivery in 1991 in time for his birthday, even though Vector warned his car wasn't fully prepped for use. Jerry reluctantly delivered the car early on the strict condition that it not be driven hard and that it would be returned for final adjustments. According to reports, Agassi couldn't resist showing off. He took his W8 out and the car promptly overheated and stalled. Agassi was furious and went public with this information and generated horrible press for Vector. Jerry claimed Agassi obviously violated this agreement, but the damage was already done. The story of a celebrity's $400,000 supercar breaking down made headlines and tarnished the W8's image. Even as the W8 was struggling to find stability, Jerry was already dreaming bigger. He began development of a successor model called the Vector AvTech WX3, AvTech standing for Advanced Vehicle Technologies, in early 1993. Vector was nearly out of money though, but Jerry scraped together the resources to build 2 WX3 prototypes: a purple metallic coupe and a teal roadster. And he dramatically unveiled these at the 1993 Geneva Motor Show, which is famously mostly for cars. The WX3 design was an evolution of the W8, a bit more curvaceous in areas and with stretched tail to improve aerodynamics. It featured even more extreme wing and aero update, in line with early 90s supercar trends. Under the skin, it retained most of the W8's hardware and layout, and Wiegert claimed the WX3 would be available with multiple powertrain options, from a standard naturally aspirated V8 to twin-turbo versions offering 600, 800 or even 1200 horsepower. The last figure being essentially a racing engine setup though, to be fair. He also floated a sky-high price of $785,000 in the early 90s, which is wild. But by 1993, Vector Aeromotive was already in dire straits financially. Cost of federalizing and building the W8 combined with its low sales had drained the company's coffers. Jerry needed an influx of capital to keep the lights on, and in 1993 he accepted investment from Indonesian conglomerate called Megatech, which acquired substantial stake in Vector in exchange for badly needed cash. But Jerry didn't know this deal would soon spiral out of control. Megatech was owned by Hutomo Mandalaputra, also known as Tommy, but more importantly was also the son of then Indonesian dictator Suharto. Not great. Who was ambitiously buying into exotic car makers. Megatech had already been in talks to purchase Automobili-Lamborghini from Chrysler at that point, and tensions grew between Jerry and Vector's new Megatech appointed board members. Megatech executives were unhappy with Vector's spending and Wiegert's leadership, especially in the expensive Geneva trip. In mid-1993, shortly after the Geneva debut, Megatech initiated a hostile takeover, aiming to push Jerry out of the driver's seat of the company that he built. I know. While Jerry was traveling, the Megatech faction called an emergency board meeting and voted to remove him as CEO, offering to retain him in a diminished role as chief designer. Effectively, a coup engineered while Jerry was vulnerable. Much like how the dictator of Indonesia got into power, I would imagine. Maybe we'll cover that on the Jason Hassett show. Upon learning this, and returning to Los Angeles, Jerry literally barricaded himself inside the Wilmington headquarters. On June 1st of 1993, Jerry fired every single employee of the company to prevent the new owners from using them and changed the building's locks. He even hired armed security to stand at the doors and refused to hand over the facility, stating that he owned the property and design patents. This dramatic standoff at Vector HQ made the news and underscored how far Jerry would go to protect his creation. Jerry had quickly filed lawsuits against Megatech to block the takeover, fighting for control in court. The ensuing legal battle was complex, but Jerry scored a partial victory. The courts eventually ruled that Megatech's stock purchase was legitimate, so they owned the Vector company and the brand name. However, Wiegert personally retained the patents, design copyrights, and prototypes for the Vector W8 and the WX3. In practice, that meant Megatech could keep the Vector company alive, but they could not build any of the WX3s as shown, nor could Wiegert exact designs without permission. Wiegert had effectively copyrighted the car's design under his own name. This win fed Jerry's narrative that he had been wronged and that he was the only one who could build real Vectors. However, in the short time, he was out of a job and out of the company. The Vector board formally removed him and made him vacate the premises. In a wild twist, though, Megatech actually succeeded in buying Lamborghini from Chrysler in 1994, a deal that Wiegert himself had been working on from the other side. Wiegert attempted to involve Vector in acquiring Lamborghini, seeing synergy in using Lamborghini's dealership and so on, and by owning Lamborghini as well as the Vector remains, Megatech suddenly had access to Italian V12 engines and a global dealer network. Assets they would soon leverage in a very different vision for Vector, one that excluded Jerry entirely. After ousting Jerry, Megatech restructured Vector. The company was relocated under the umbrella of Megatech's holdings in the US. Operations would eventually move to Jacksonville in Florida, and Wiegert's sleek WX3 prototype was shelved due to the legal injunctions. So the new owners had to come up with an alternative model to sell. They decided to capitalize on their other asset, a huge one, Lamborghini. Megatech's team, led by new CEO Roy Macuno and others, quickly developed the Vector M12, essentially a hybrid of Vector styling and Lamborghini engineering. They took the existing WX3 chassis and modified it to accept Lamborghini's, the engine that was then in the Diablo. Unlike the W8's transverse layout, the M12's V12 was longitudinally mounted with a 5-speed manual transmission. In fact, much of the M12's running gear came directly from the Diablo parts bin. The exterior was lightly restyled by a British designer, Peter Stevens, who was known for designing the McLaren F1 in the 90s to avoid copying Wiegert's exact WX3 design. Stevens gave the car a pointier nose, removed some of the small grille inlets, and fitted new headlights borrowed from the Nissan 300ZX, which completely changed the face of the car. The tail was also extended and reproportioned to fit the longer V12 drivetrain. The resulting Vector M12 still resembles a Vector, but with a distinct Diablo influence. The Vector M12 debuted publicly in January of 1996 at the North American Auto Show, which is famously mostly for cars. Well done. Priced around $184,000, significantly cheaper than its previous W8, but notably more expensive than a new Lamborghini. The M12 was met with mixed reactions. Some enthusiasts were happy to see the Vector name live on, but many saw it as a watered-down Vector. The press initially was harsh because the M12 used a Lamborghini engine and many off the parts shelf. Critics said it betrayed Wiegert's all-American bespoke vision. They said that there's an Italian engine going in my American car and I'm not having these commies and fascists coming over here putting their engines in my supercar. But unfortunately, people who talk like that generally didn't have $184,000, so we'll see how this continues on. No offense to the South, folks. The car's styling also drew criticism. One magazine called it the ugly stepsister of the Diablo, suggesting that the Fusion hadn't really improved on the Italian original. Performance was good, but not earth-shattering. The M12's 492 horsepower could hit 0 to 60 in 4.7 seconds and a top speed of 190 miles an hour. Respectable, but actually a lot slower than the lighter twin-turbo W8 that preceded it. Although it was cheaper, to be fair. Vector under Megatech struggled to find buyers for the M12. Over 1996 and 1997, the car trickled out of the Florida factory at a snail's pace. In total, only 14 of the M12s were ever produced. A few notable owners included the Indonesian royalty and American collectors, but the M12 never gained any traction in the actual market. Enthusiasts were unconvinced. For similar money, they could buy a proven Ferrari or Lamborghini with better performance. And furthermore, quality issues abounded, plaguing the M12 in its early days. And without Wiegert's charisma, Vector's public profile was diminished. Megatech itself ran into serious trouble when the Asian financial crisis of 97 to 98 hit Indonesia. The flow of money that had been propping up ventures like Vector suddenly collapsed. Facing bankruptcy, Megatech divested its car businesses. In mid-1998, Lamborghini was sold to Audi AG, therefore falling under Volkswagen, and Vector was sold off to a private American investment group called TradeLink International. TradeLink did briefly try to save Vector by continuing M12 production under the new name Vector Automotive. They even developed one final iteration, the Vector SR-V8, in 1998. Essentially a cost-cut M12, ditching the Lamborghini V12 in favor of a more affordable 350 cubic inch Chevrolet LT1 V8 borrowed from the C4 Corvette, mated to a Porsche G50 transaxle. It was poorly received with a small V8. It was underpowered compared to past Vectors, and its styling was deemed the least attractive of the lineage, so it just kind of fell apart. Only one SR-V8 was ever completed and shown. It was painted yellow and black and sometimes nicknamed the Vector M12 GT, but TradeLink shut down Vector production entirely around the year 2000, and the American dream for Vector seemed to have officially sputtered out. But Jerry hadn't given up. Even as Vector TradeLink was fading away, Gerald Wiegert still hadn't given up. He engaged in continued litigation and negotiation throughout the 90s. And in 1999, Jerry achieved a measure of redemption. A court settlement returned him the Vector trademarks and remaining inventory, as well as the intellectual property that he had lost in 1993. It said that about 15 semi-trailers worth of cars, parts, and equipment were delivered back to Wiegert's control in California, including some unfinished chassis and the two WX3 prototypes. With rights to the Vector's name and designs back in his hands, Wiegert immediately announced intention to revive the marque. Wiegert formed a new company, Vector Motors, and set out to create an all-new American supercar for the 21st century. Ever the optimist, he told the press that new investors were on the horizon. Through the early 2000s, rumors of a next-generation Vector periodically surfaced in car enthusiast media. Wiegert himself kept a low profile this time, occasionally appearing at auto shows, which are, and hinting at big plans. By the mid-decade, he had begun work on a prototype called the Vector WX8, intended to be his magnum opus. In 2007, Jerry finally pulled the wraps off the Vector WX8 at the Greater Los Angeles Auto Show. I'm not doing it. The prototype WX8 was an angular, aggressive coupe that certainly carried Vector DNA, though some observers noted its front end looked oddly like a fourth-generation Camaro on steroids. The car was painted silver and black, and while it was a striking machine, it lacked the fully refined finish of earlier Vector prototypes, and Wiegert claims for its performance were, in classic fashion, astronomical. He advertised a 10-litre twin-turbo V8 capable of 2,000 plus horsepower, predicting a 270-mile-an-hour top speed and a 0 to 60 in just 2 seconds. He also mentioned a more practical version with a turbocharged 7-litre V8 and even floated the idea of a hybrid powertrain, indicating he was trying to keep up with contemporary trends. Wiegert used older cars, the WX3 prototype, as assets to fund the new project. In 2006, he sold the WX3 Coupe and Roadster at auction in Sotheby's for over $1 million combined. The money helped get the WX show car built. And between 2007 and 2010, the WX8 made the rounds at various car shows, including the Pebble Beach Concours and SEMA, usually trailered by Wiegert himself. Each appearance came across with bold press releases. And in 2008, Vector's website proclaimed the WX8 would be America's only hyper-performance vehicle. And the car featured eye-catching details, scissor doors, fighter jet-like toggle switches. However, outsiders noticed it didn't function at the time. And you need to remember as well, Lamborghini was also doing a lot of these things by then. As the years passed, no major investors materialized for Vector's motors. Still, Wiegert persisted. He updated the WX8 design slightly and continued to court potential buyers throughout the 2010s. As late as 2018, he was still giving interviews and releasing statements that the WX8 was coming. But on January 15th, 2021, Jerry unfortunately passed away. And with his death, the Vector saga essentially came to an end. But what an incredible run. And you know what? Fair play to Jerry for just 50 years of pushing to get his dream alive and for doing it in the first place. Sure, it didn't end up exactly as he wanted, but his dream of creating an all-American supercar did come into fruition, even if it exploded in the hands of Andre Agassi. It's still incredible that he got it live, and really stunning looking cars, and really incredible that he really pushed for it. And the thing is, sure, some wild claims of 200 plus miles an hour, but the car did probably get 200 miles an hour. And they claimed that he was 3.9 seconds and got to 3.8 seconds, not to 60. The fact that he made all of this happen, it's frankly incredible. And I think should be applauded. That's the story of Vector. Let me know what you want covered next. I think we'll do a turbine car next. But there's lots and lots of stories to jump into. And thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to try and get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. I really appreciate it. Goodbye.